Okay, we're fully live. So take about a minute or two to warm up here, and we'll get cooking.
I will go share that with the team. Then we will get rocking and rolling.
Make sure you're doing team-wide, not the company.
Okay. Cool.
Oh, that reminded me of
Cool.
one more.
Hey, Carrie, I see you on TikTok. Hello to people watching us on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. We'll wait. We'll give some more people some time to jump on in, but then we will get started. We have a really cool format for today. Really excited to jump into that. Kind of a Q&A for Travis. Put his feet to the fire for just getting a basic understanding of Fink that I think a lot of people are craving. Appreciate the like, Carrie. That's always helpful. All right. Making sure I'm seeing us on Facebook. There we go. All right.
Get cooking.
Okay, awesome. Let's get rocking and rolling. So welcome. We are Fink, Future is Now Coalition. We're live right now on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. So hello for wherever you're viewing us from. So as Fink, we would like you guys to think of us as a civic utility company. And just like any other utility company on Earth, we are connecting masses of people into a shared resources and shared standards operating system. So that is exactly what Fink is plugging into democracy. So we plug everyone into a fair, citizen-led system of representation. So how are we doing that? Well, we're making participation simple by three main items. First, at Fink, we are putting every candidate on equal footing. We are lowering the barriers for grassroots voices, and we are streamlining the democratic process. So all of these components lead us into a system that has less waste, right? Isn't that great? As well as more representation. So with this system and those components, built-in accountability will be had along these shared standards. And what that does, it keeps leaders, right, the people we give power to, it keeps them answerable to us, the people, while also reducing the need and sway of big money in politics. So again, we are Fink, and we invite everyone to plug in, be heard, and get results. So before we get into the real meat and potatoes of what today's episode is, I just want to invite everyone to dive into the conversation. You know, give us a heart, tap that heart button, jump into the chat, talk with us. And with such a people-powered, people-focused mission like ours, the simple act of hitting follow or subscribe, I don't quite know what Facebook is, but hitting that subscribe button is a great way to show support and to help amplify our message so other people can hear it as well. So we've gained a good amount of traction in the past couple of weeks on TikTok. We're so close to 600. So we're just really thankful for all the people who have shown us that love previously. So for getting in today's episode, we're switching up the format a bit, and it's going to be a bit of a Q&A question. And I think when people come into our chats, right, they're hungry for what we have to offer. So we're trying this different mode of relaying that to you guys, what we have to offer, who we are, what we're all about, and how we're really changing the system. So I will be asking some questions, and then Travis will be giving us the breakdown of how Fink answers those things. So we will jump right into that. Okay, Travis, my first question, because when people first, come into these lives, they probably see that purple screen that says not left, not right, just representation. So can you explain what just representation actually means?
Yeah, sure. So basically what we're trying to show at the forefront is that we want to push for everything that's pro-representation, pro-grassroots, and basically everything that's not status quo. And so with our concept of digital politics, we are trying to help people learn the assessment that you could pretty much put everyone, all politicians and media, into categories of up versus down. Are they up serving or are they down serving? Up serving means they serve power, they serve big donors, special interests, they serve people above rather than where they should be, which is down serving candidates or the grassroots candidates, and they serve the voters, the people, and those who they're supposed to be serving. They're supposed to be civic servants. So what we're trying to say here is that more important than left versus right, what specific policies are you supposedly pushing for? We want people to realize that the biggest battle is really up versus down. And the idea is that both Democrats and Republicans that are in office right now are mostly all up serving. They have a lot of conflicts of interest. The money they receive, the support they receive by those with a concentration of power leads to conflicts. So for example, if politicians are gaining millions of dollars from like big pharma and the private health insurance industry, how can they ever give us a better healthcare system that benefits the people? So those in power are giving these politicians money to not regulate them and not do what's in the best interest of the many and instead just the few. So in a nutshell, that's what we mean by not left, not right, just representation, is that we want to amplify all efforts that are truly for the people. So that's underdog politicians, independent journalists, and grassroots organizations. And, by lifting them, regardless if they're left, they're right, they're libertarian, third party, independent, we respect all those ideologies. We just want people that don't have these conflicts of interest and those that truly want to do right by the American people. So even if I don't personally agree with their strategy, it's like what is their intention? Are they genuinely here to serve us, or are they serving, the concentration of power?
Awesome. And if we could go a little deeper into that, how would Fink address slogans or voting strategies like any blue will do, or we can't rock the boat because if there's any shakeup in the Democratic Party or even the Republican Party, I don't know if they have a slogan like any red will do. But how would Fink address that kind of voting mentality of you have to vote party to ensure your representation?
Yeah, sure. So because that is one of our biggest people trying to rebuttal us at this stage, is like, oh, Trump's doing such bad things, like we don't want to shine a light at what's negative about the Democrats, because we just need them to beat Trump, don't care about anything else, just need to stop Trump. So let's pretend everything is fine and dandy, because we don't want to lower any chances of Democrats beating Trump. And then what we say to that is like, we want people to understand that if you don't like Trump, you believe he's a fascist or however, the bottom line is he's a symptom to the problem. If you buy into the fascism language, we don't endorse it nor deny it. But if you think of him as a fascist, well, virtually every single time in history that fascism came to light was a time when the citizens felt the most desperate, and they felt like they were not empowered, they were desperate for change and not succeeding. And so we have to acknowledge that there's a lot of pain in this country, and that's when fascism or authoritarianism or just any form of manipulation can rise to powers, when people are at their most desperate. And so, when everyone says any blue do, don't shake up the Democrats, listen, of all time in modern history, Democrats have the lowest approval rating ever. For the first time in modern history, there's more people identifying as independents than identify as Democrat or Republican. So, for 13 years, people are saying, but Trump, but Trump, but Trump. Democrats don't have to stand for anything. They just have to not be Trump. And it's not working. He got elected twice with that message already. And he's more powerful than ever with this message of vote for us. We're not Trump. That's not enough of a motivation. And poll after poll shows that people feel Democrats are weak. They have no vision, no direction. Literally all they're saying is we're not Trump, so vote for us. He's worse than us. And that can only get you so far. So all in all, what we're trying to say is they're the ones, by not shaking up the boat, they're taking on a bigger risk than we are. We're trying to get to the heart of the problem. This is what's going on. Both parties are losing approval. Both parties have abysmal approval ratings. Democrats are actually worse right now than Republicans, but both have abysmal approval ratings. They're Democrats are in the 20 percentile, Republicans are in the 30%. Back in the day, most candidates would be in the high 40s, lowest 50%, 60% approval. So this is absurd how low approval these guys are getting. But the bottom line is that the system has been crumbling. Both parties are at fault. It's those in power are not representing the voters. Democrat policies are very popular within the Democratic people, but those in office are not actually pushing them as far as it needs to be, basically. Sorry, just looking at the comments here. Yeah, so what Carrie, I'm just going to touch on these real quick. So what Carrie's saying, only pushing hate and no solution. I mean, we've been saying this we've all heard these criticisms for the last decade of politicians run more attack ads than what they're for. They're always this is what my opponent is doing. It's okay, but what are you doing? What do you want to do? It's and you ask them the question, oh, how are you going to fix healthcare? Well, the other people, they're going to blah, blah, blah. No, what are you going to do for healthcare? So that's part of the problem. And then let's see what Robert said. Well, we could have we want honest, competent, crime-free, but let's face it, I mean, I don't know if this is inevitable, but both parties, Biden, I'm sure has crime it's not the same as Trump, that's a new degree, but again, it's not one of the key things we're here about is we're not here to fight about who the lesser evil is. You might 100% believe that Democrats are a way lesser evil than Trump. I'm not gonna go against that. But the point is, by having only a lesser to evil choice, a lot of Americans decide not to go home, not to vote in the polls. They decide not to be involved in these things. So that's the bottom line. Is it's not even up to me. It's I'm looking at the polls and what America says, and people are fed up with this. So even if Trump is the worst choice, you're not going to get enough people excited to fight for the Democrats when all they are is against Trump. You get some people, plenty of people, but not it's a slim, it's a risky level of, are you going to have enough votes to, overcome him, kind of thing.
Yeah, and something I want to add in too is isn't that the dream, regardless of what party someone comes from? A president's the highest level of power and authority in our nation, right? We want that honesty, corruption free, blah, blah, blah. But it does no good to just point at one person or one party or one instance of power. We're saying, if you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, if you're another party, it's all about representation, right? That corruption, that honesty, that merit cannot blossom right now, is what we're saying, in the current system, right? So that honesty, that corruption-free, that kind of fairy tale politician right now, just is, there's no way for that kind of person to rise into the rank of really anything because of the corrupt nature of the system. So sure, if you want to talk about certain politicians and the ilks of certain parties, great, right? That's fine and dandy. But we're talking about, hey, the system is why they're allowed to flourish. The system got them in power, and so it's keeping them in power while keeping the honest, quality, representative politician beaten down. So it's really about zooming out of the tribalism of parties, zooming out of name dropping, and saying, why? It's really questioning the system. Why do people who are mega rich off of their power and getting richer while not doing the policies that they promised us, like, why is that allowed to happen? And that's what Fink is addressing, right? So it's not just, hey, that person sucks. It's like, yeah, we can all see that person sucks. What do we do about it? How do we stop history from repeating itself and actually have better quality people allowed on the debate stage, allowed on mainstream media, allowed on XYZ, so that we can have better opportunities to cast our votes for quality people.
And just real quick, and last point on that, it's debatable about I would have to do deep research to say if there's active crimes against Biden. I know when Hillary was running, there were certain active criminal allegations, but when you say honest, that's definitely debatable on both sides. How honest are either candidates? They have the problem is that bribery is legal right now. Since Citizens United, a corporation could give endless money to help a candidate win, and on paper, there's not allowed to be a quid pro quo, but there's a quid pro quo. If a corporation is going to give $10 million to help a politician, you're damn right they had some kind of wink and a nod or secret conversation that there's going to be some kind of return on that. So, honest is a big thing. I mean, that's what a lot of people that left the Democratic Party, that's the biggest thing that they left about Democrats, is that they don't actually fight for what they say they're going to fight for. Love them or hate them on the Republicans, they get shit done and they fight for what they're going to do in office. Democrats will, this is what we're going to do. And then once they're in office, we're 2 votes shy getting it done. What could we do? Republicans seem to be able to get their shit done, but when we're in office, we can't. And that's, whether it's true or not, that is millions of people believe that, and they would support those policies, but that's why they've left that party.
Awesome. Okay, moving on to a new question. At Fink, we talk about making sure every candidate is seen and every citizen is heard. Why isn't that happening today? And what's blocking it today? I guess it's the same question, but what is making that impossible or very inefficient today?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So, yeah, the idea is that, so the system of voting is there. So we legit, Americans go to the polls and whatever we vote for, that system exists. The problem is we're manipulated on our choices. So, you might have an ideal candidate you want, but day in and day out, the news is going to tell you they're not electable, that voting for them is going to help the other side, that it's just impossible. They're promising, unicorns and this and that. So the media, party leaders, a lot of the money at the top is going to go towards manipulating us to make certain choices. Because we do have the power. We have the power of democracy. We have the power of our vote, but we get manipulated to vote for the lesser of two evils. And that's what we need to overcome right now. So when we say every voice heard, because the problem right now also is that when you're a grassroots voice, if you're a voice the establishment doesn't like, your voice is not going to go as far. So for a grassroots politician, for example, they're not going to be allowed in most debate stages. They're not going to be interviewed by CNN or MSNBC or Fox anytime soon. They're not even going to be acknowledged that they're even running in a race. So whether you're a politician, a grassroots organization, or just an American citizen, if your voice is more of a threat towards the establishment, they're going to weaken how loud your voice is. And that is the core problem. That's how this whole that's a key piece to how this manipulation happens. So for example, if a party's going to run a primary, and let's say we have an establishment candidate and we have 4 grassroots candidates, the establishment's going to push that establishment candidate. They're going to push them forward. They're going to give them tons of press. They're going to put them on the debates every time they can. They'll interview them. They're going to tell America, oh, this person's leading in the charge. Okay, well, they're leading because they're known. These grassroots guys haven't been known yet. That you can give them a chance to become known, but it's like almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So they oust the grassroots people, they push them aside, and that goes for average citizens as well. That anytime they're not going to like a narrative, they're going to weaken the voices and how far a narrative carries. And so what we're doing here at Think is building an infrastructure where that doesn't happen, where everyone has a voice. It's not the same as every single one gets pushed all the way to the top. Everyone, it's equal opportunity, not equal outcome. Everyone, you might have 5 different grassroots candidates. Maybe 4 of them are not that great. Maybe they're too pie in the sky or whatever, and America doesn't resonate with them. Okay, we'll give them a chance to speak to America, but then if they don't succeed in resonating, they start trickling off, and then the one that does resonate with people will rise higher and higher and get in front of more people. So we want to build a system where everyone has the opportunity to share their voice, be heard, and then from there you allow America to democratically lift who they want to lift and not lift who they don't want to lift. And it's basic social media algorithms. There's certain cheats in current algorithms, but if we just create a fair algorithm, you like a politician or even just a citizen, what they're saying, you give them a thumbs up. If you don't, you give them a thumbs down. And those were more thumbs up will start rising higher to the top. It's basically that simple, just a little bit more fair than what typical social media gives. But so we want to give everyone an equal opportunity to speak, and then from there let democracy bring to rise who deserves to be brought to the top.
So next question, Travis. Can you explain the difference between democracy as a system and politics maybe as more itemized? And also, with your answer, explain how that feeds into Think addressing the rigged system itself. And hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I get what you're asking about. So what we're trying to help people grasp is or kind of divide that there's kind of 2 separate conversations that need to be happening right now. So most people talk about politics. So they're talking about, this is the policy I want for healthcare. This is what I want for social issues. This is what I want for immigration. So that's politics. That's a specific policies of specific topics that people want to push through. When Think talks about democracy, we're talking about the system itself, the system that, what influences us to vote for a certain candidate? How does the election process go? How do the primaries go? Who's involved in the primaries? So we're more focused on the system of electing our politicians, the system of allowing the right people to be elected. So, for example, a systemic system issue is, the fact that third parties are almost impossible to win in elections. Independents are almost impossible to win. That's a system issue. Most Americans want third party options. The latest stats are showing about 63% of Americans want third parties to be viable. So that's a system issue. It doesn't matter where they stand on healthcare. It doesn't matter where they stand specifically on immigration. The system itself is a problem, and the system is not representing Americans. statistic after statistic shows there's almost a zero correlation between what Americans want and what politicians legislate. So for example, even if 90% of Americans want something, opposed to only like 10% of Americans wanting something, there's a negligible impact on how likely that legislation goes into office. And it's like purely on who funded the politicians, who at the top wants this legislation to happen. That's what gets it pushed through. It doesn't matter, like you would think, and this is the system we were supposed to live in, is that the larger percentage of Americans wanting something should increase its chances of getting passed. And it doesn't have to be 100% correlation, but there should be like a pretty decent correlation. If 80-90% of your country agrees on something, it probably should be passed in. And yet not only does it not get passed, they don't acknowledge it. They pretend they don't know that most America wants these things. So these are all system issues. We want to fix the system to make sure Americans get what they want. And it's divided up. There's different states, there's different districts, there's people with different ideologies in different areas. Like, it's not going to be like one party and one stance on policy wins the entire country, but it still needs to match and represent those in those districts in a way that it's not right now. So that's the bottom line for the difference of, like, when we talk about democracy, we're talking about the system that was built. Like our forefathers, when they built this system, they talked about a system of checks and balances, Senate, you have a president, judiciary branch. They weren't talking about, oh, what's our immigration policy? Oh, what's our healthcare policy? No, that came later. They're making the system that comes in, that then those policies are the content that goes inside that system. And last, I'll leave it with an analogy. It's like Facebook and social media in general is a system, but the influencers, the people that put content into Facebook, is not the system. That's the day-to-day stuff. So democracy is like the Facebook, the platform of which people are using, and then politics is like the content. What they're using the system to produce is the politics. Yeah.
Awesome. And as a follow-up to that, right? So if a good majority, maybe not full majority, but like a good majority of people agree on something and it's not being represented in the halls of Congress, can we talk about maybe one or two things that might surprise people, that crosses party lines, crosses generation lines, right? So what are some of these big ticket wants of the American people that are just not represented in the halls of Congress right now? That might surprise people too.
Sure. So I mean, like the easiest ones, or the main ones that we push for, is like money out of politics. Depending on the survey, at least 85 to 95% of Americans want money out of politics. 85 to 90% want to pass laws that stop allowing Congress to insider trading with the stock market. Most Americans want so far, not everyone knows about what ranked choice voting and flexible voting methods are, but those that learn about it deeply are in favor of things like ranked choice voting, proportional voting, finding other ways so it's not a winner take all system. So most people agree on that. And then like term limits is a big one that has a high percentage. And then there's a lot of issues that are more like social and like sometimes I hesitate to say them just by stating the facts. I sometimes comes off partisan, but there's at least a certain layer of like social issues, like gay marriage is like in the 70-80% of Americans want that. Reproductive rights, 70-80% of Americans have a specific stance. There's extremes, but there's like a middle ground where like most people feel comfortable. So there's a lot of issues that people would find partisan, there's a middle layer, and it just, the way it's portrayed ends up throwing people off. That like with reproductive rights, it's either like no one, 100% of no one can get it, or it's like, somebody 9 months pregnant can get it. And it's like, most people have an agreement of where it should be, and only certain scenarios past a certain stage. And like, so, if politicians did their job and like asked America and then just built a policy based on what has the highest favorability, there's a lot of places where people land. So in a nutshell, things like the money out of politics things that are fair, things that help people. People want access to be able to vote. Like certain things like ID laws get a little more controversial, or like who's a citizen gets controversial. But like for if you're supposed to be a citizen, you're voting, like there should be a pretty relatively easy path to be able to vote. Most people agree with that kind of stuff. So really, it's the stuff that we talk about, democracy, and less about politics, that a huge number of people agree on all sides. Ending gerrymandering. No one wants to do gerrymandering, even if you feel it benefits your party. It's just naturally not a good thing. So that has very clear statistics too. So yeah.
Yeah, I laughed to myself, and you're like, oh, if politicians just did their job, and like that's the whole point of this organization and so many reform organizations of trying to make politicians do their job. Something like gerrymandering, right? It's like that's such a complicated thing because it's a tool, right? But usually, if the other party, whatever the other party is, when they use it, it's evil. But when your party uses it, it's strategic. So it's like. It either has to be evil or good, or it can't just change based on the user of it. So that's something that's really so I guess complicated is the right word, right? Because how you feel about gerrymandering kind of shouldn't change depending on what lens you're coming at it with. But to tie into that, Travis, so if any of you saw our live yesterday, we talked a lot about how we use at Think. We're not asking for the blessing of the establishment. We're not asking for only legislation to change, and that's how you change the overall system. We're saying that comes later, but how Think is using today's rules, today's system differently to get different results. So Travis, can you go deeper into maybe one or two examples of what that means? How do we use the current system differently to get different results?
Yeah, sure. So, so this is one of the things that makes our mission, our strategy radically different. So most organizations or a lot of organizations, not necessarily most, they fight for a certain legislation to be pushed into office. And what we're doing, we really want to take a more realistic approach. The idea is in the last, at one point it worked where protesting, giving public pressure, calling your senator would work. But unfortunately, as money in politics has worsened and the corruption has worsened, the ultra partisanship has worsened, that strategy is less and less effective. You could have millions of people protesting, and it might not have any legislative impact now. What our strategy is and what makes it so different is that we're not counting on legislative change. In fact, we're planning that's the last step, literally a decade or two down the line. What we're doing is building, think of it as a digital overlay over our current political system. So, when you look at the current system, you see billboards and ads that doesn't really tell you anything about the candidate. It just craps on the other guy. Maybe it has some airy-fairy, blurred, crappy slogan on there. But you don't really know where they stand. But then when you turn on this digital layer, see things in digital politics, and start tapping into the information we're connecting people into, then you see who's funding their campaign, where are their conflicts of interest, who's grassroots, who's not, who's only taking small dollar donations, who's only taking volunteering in small dollars versus billionaires and big donors. Who breaks their promises more than others. So we're basically forcing a new layer of transparency that the politicians don't necessarily want you to be able to see. Basically see the skeletons in their closet. And so all in all, the bottom line is like all we want to do is empower the American people. We want to beeline directly to you to give you this overlay of new information of like, again, the funding and conflicts of interest, as well as interconnect you to all sorts of grassroots efforts. So we'll help you find independent journalists. Doesn't matter, they'll be left-leaning journalists, right-leaning journalists, libertarian journalists, like everyone grassroots. We'll help you. We're going to help like matchmake for that, help you find politicians that you resonate with, help you find other political orgs that you resonate with. So building this new layer that interconnects democracy in this new digital way, really in a way that, if we lived in a true democracy, the government would have built something like this for us, but, we're not, we can count on them. So we want to plug everyone into this digital overlay of democracy to connect you into information where it doesn't matter if you're the highest bidder. It's based on merit, right? Makes you rise to the top. And so the idea is like everything that we're doing can have massive change just by changing, like helping Americans make better voting decisions for themselves can literally change the entire system from the bottom up. Like everything boils down to elections. Whoever, if people vote differently, it changes everything. And so luckily we don't have to change legislation for that. We just need to talk to the voters, give them this new framing and access to all this new information, basically give you a level playing field. So it's not just like the establishment that could spend billions to make sure you hear them. It's like, no, all these different independent journalists and underdog candidates, all of them have a chance to speak to you and prove why they deserve your vote or deserve your support in another way or deserve a donation in some way. So we're acknowledging that, like, what could we change, even though we can't count on legislative change, like passing ranked choice voting or making money out of politics, money in politics illegal. But so for example, since we can't make money in politics illegal, what we're doing instead is making it super transparent. So it's like, hey, we can't stop you, candidate, from taking $10 million from big oil, but we sure as hell can make it easier for your voters to know that you took $10 million from big oil. And that's kind of like the perfect example of what we're doing. So, we're acknowledging we can't change the system yet, but we can build this overlay of information, evolve our own voting habits to make better choices for ourselves, and then that can change the entire system. Then once you have better candidates in office, even just a small percentage of better candidates in office, then you really have the legislative power to start actually passing the laws that America wants passed and for endless time and just don't get what they want.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a great explanation, Travis. So I think we've talked enough about kind of our mission or our viewpoint on like what's broken. So I'd like to kind of end this episode about what Fink is actually doing. What is Fink and what is so unique about Fink? So if you could tell us why we as Fink call ourselves a civic utility company instead of a movement or a campaign.
Sure. So we want to be the connective tissue and infrastructure that empowers these different movements. There's tons of movements, political orgs. There's tens of third parties, millions of underdog politicians out there. So there's enough of the existing things that are out there. We're not looking to just duplicate the current efforts that exist. What we want to do is build a connective tissue that builds just a better infrastructure that, like, again, like you could be a progressive, libertarian, socialist, anarchist, No matter where you are on the political spectrum, we want to cast this wide net of just everyone that wants to work within a fair democracy and not cheat with getting big donors and buying voice. We don't want people to buy voice. We want them to earn it through democracy, through their own merit. So we want to be a connective tissue rather than leading a charge. We want to be the support system for movements and underdog candidates. Like, we're never going to run our own candidates. We're never going to push our own specific policies. We're here to empower all grassroots efforts and then let America work out who America wants the most, who people don't want, and let democracy make its own decisions. So as a utility company, we want to plug everyone in. It's kind of like, instead of plugging you into electricity, we're plugging you into democracy. And envision, each citizen has some level of democracy energy that you can focus. So there's micro volunteer actions that can help somebody. It could be as simple as you like a certain candidate, so you share their campaign all the time when they post, you like their stuff, you comment. That's a micro action. That's giving your energy towards something that you like and you want to help. So your vote gives energy, micro actions give that energy, donating gives energy. So anything you do towards that influences democracy in some way is giving your energy. So right now, people give their energy not really knowing where it goes. A good example was the No Kings protest. Millions and millions of people went, but the goal was just broad. There wasn't a set specific goal for where does that energy go. And so it didn't do as much change as it could have. But you have millions of people. It's all of them were we demand money out of politics, or we're going to keep protesting, or, it wasn't even oh, we want to impeach Trump. There wasn't there wasn't a specific thing they're fighting for. So basically their energy kind of went too wide. And you could say it still did something. It kept spirits up. It shows people that are paying attention, whatever. But, when push comes to shove, it's not changing the system or legislation. And so we want to systematize an easier way to know where's my energy coming in from and where am I putting my energy out to. Another example is if you donate to just the part, the Democrat Party, the Republican Party, you don't know where it goes. You can assume, oh, well, I care about immigration, so I'm giving it to the Republican Party. Well, you don't know that money's specifically going to immigration. It's going to the party. You don't know where it's going. So, the more specifically your money or efforts go, then a little bit better of where, what effort are you funding, basically. So a lot of what we're doing is just structuring that out, making it easier to understand who should I give my money to, who should I give my efforts to. In some ways we're a communication platform where you want to just interconnect, grassroots organizations, underdog politicians, citizens, and independent journalists. Right now we're in the next couple of weeks, we're going to start showing up on different podcasts. We're talking to different allies of reform organizations and such. So we're trying to just build this wide network of everyone that's grassroots, and then build this infrastructure that really interconnects everyone to find who they want to resonate with, find who they want to support, and just put your energy to the best use you can. So, none of us want politics to be a second job. Maybe you want to spend 5 minutes a day to do something tiny. Well, we're building a system that allows you to, you want to spend 5 minutes a day or 30 minutes once a week or however much time you're going to spend. We want to make it so you could do the least amount of effort to make the most amount of impact and really influence the results. All really boils down to results of the elections and either directly or indirectly. So that's how we're a utility. We're, building infrastructure, structuring these things, systematizing things. The system itself of democracy is breaking down. We can't fix that, but we can build an overlay over it to make sense of things digitally on top of, the current breaking down. So whether you understand like augmented reality, it's like an augmented information on top of politics, or an overlay on top of politics. It adds a level of controlling of organizing, of how citizens can build consensuses and know, if enough people vote for this third party candidate in this race, they'll actually have a chance to get them to win. There's a lot of pieces to it, but that's kind of the overall.
Yeah, and before we start wrapping up, I want to talk a little bit about Fink isn't pro third party only. We're not pro anyone but Democrats or Republicans. And that's often something that I think it's muddled when we talk, because we do want to uplift the voices of non-traditional, non-establishment candidates. But that doesn't negate, if you love being part of the Democratic Party, if you love being part of the Republican Party, we want you to also have better options, you to have better, quality candidates that aren't hand selected and then just regurgitated for you to tick off, come election day. So it's kind of a take away the political labels. We want you to spend your money better, vote better, and just have better options and better opportunities to engage with a system that's meant to work for you that currently isn't. So I don't know if you want have any last words about that, Travis. I was going to wrap us up if not.
No, to wrap up.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Again, we're live on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube today. We're live every Tuesday and Wednesday. That will be at 2 o'clock Eastern and 11 Pacific. So again, we're Fink, Future is Now Coalition. We have a lot of big plans, big ideas, but we want to make them tangible and usable to people like you. So keep tuning in. Check out our website, futureis.org, and check out our social media. Our handle is futureis.org. And just like Carrie has been talking about in the chat, little motions of support, liking a video, subscribing to the channel, commenting on something. We are such a people-forward, people-driven organization and mission that those are super appreciated and super powerful for an organization like us. So again, tune in next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. And we're here for you guys, and we have some big things coming. So be sure to check us out, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Yep. Thank you, guys.